Hello, everyone, and welcome to PR Explored. So happy to be with you today. This is a PR video podcast where we delve into topics and trends related to public relations. I'm your host, Michelle Garrett. I'm a public relations consultant, an author, and writer. And today, my guest is my colleague and my good friend, Bill Byrne of Remedy PR. Hi, Bill.
Hey, Michelle. Hello, everybody.
Welcome. So glad to have you back again to talk about trends.
Super excited. This is going to be really fun. And I've got 2 cups of coffee. So, everyone watching, buckle in.
Well, before we get started, while everyone kind of joins us and gets settled, why don't you tell us about what you've been up to? What's your latest and greatest?
Oh my gosh. So, like many that do a lot in the consumer and tech space, we've wrapped up holiday PR, which is always a grind, always competitive. You're always going to say, oh, it can't be as bad as last year. No, it's always harder. And that's how PR is. The CES show, Consumer Electronics Show, for those not in the space, is around the corner in January. So that adds to the mix. I love that that show is right after the holidays because who wants to take vacation between Christmas and New Year's? Not me. Active Outdoor is still a big focus on what we do. And we have a very interesting project going on with coral reef preservation. So that's something I'm really looking forward to diving into, doing the back end work now. And we're going to kick that project off in Q1. And it's in collaboration with SDSU. So really exciting stuff there.
Yay! You sounds like you're busy.
There's no rest in PR, right?
Well, I'm looking forward to taking a little rest here. I don't know. I remember the CES days. I used to work at Silicon Graphics like years ago, and that was a big event for them. And everybody hated it because we knew we were going to have to like work between Christmas and New Year's. And oh man, I don't miss that.
It's pretty much as chaotic as you remember, and when it's done, you just okay, I can decompress.
Well, I am thrilled that you took a little bit of time before the holidays to kind of wrap up. This is my last episode of the year. We're going to talk all about PR trends and help people kind of get their, mind set for the new year and kind of get their arms around what they might be wanting to keep an eye on. And I would love if anybody has a question or comment, they can certainly chat with us, and we would be happy to answer questions and hear what you have to say too. So please feel free to weigh in. And I think we'll just kind of get started with our first. We kind of came up with a list of things that we wanted to cover. So one of the things that's kind of been a theme, not only this year, but I mean, and going into next year, is just the shrinking number of journalists, right? Entire media outlets are closing up. Journalists are being laid off just in record numbers. And this trend is not really going to go away. Do you think? I mean, it's here to stay.
Yeah, no, it's so you and I have been doing this for a long time, and we've both seen it go up and down. So at least for the short term, it's a trend. But what we're also seeing is the rise of micro journalists, where 10 years ago we had this rise of influencers and then micro influencers. So a lot of journalists who are literally the original influencers, the original content creators, are turning to places such as Substack to publish their own content. A great example locally is a gentleman by the name of Fred Greer, who has worked for the San Diego Business Journal. He's actually back there now, but in between, he started his own Substack as he was getting his MBA, called The Business of San Diego, or Business San Diego, excuse me. And that focuses on a lot in the tech community, biotech community here, a lot of entrepreneurship sort of things. So he's basically self-publishing now and really influential in San Diego. Now, does he have the reach that he used to? No, but he's definitely got serious influence. And he's on the radar for a lot of people. I'm going to see that trend going further and further, whether it's consumer products, electronics, outdoors. There's going to be these micro journalists, for lack of a better word. And
Mhm.
we have to target them. We have to reach out to them. And it's going to take more effort than if it was just, a handful of publications you wanted to go out to. You've got to do more now.
Yeah, and I think you kinda have to think outside the box. I mean, it impacts me less in B2B with trade, publications. They have very short small staffs anyway,
Mhm.
and s but they are always looking for content. So, I see it as less of a thing in trades, which are also good for AI search, which we're gonna talk about in just a few minutes. But, um but yeah, I think that you just kinda have to think, I've even recommended and had some success with clients looking at newsletters, like industry association publications and newsletters, because that's really where their audience is spending time. So,
Completely. And you don't know what that tier A journalist from whatever the home run publication that you want to be in
yep.
is reading. A lot of those journalists are reading the trades to
Yes.
get their information. And that's something that a lot of brands overlook. Like, I don't want to be in this publication that's read by 30,000 people. I want to be in this publication that's read by whatever, 5 million people.
Right.
Cool. But the gatekeeper to those 5 million people is looking at that trade publication. So you need to be on both. And you can't just want that, whatever it is, Wall Street Journal story, CNN, Men's Journal. You've got to look at the trades and build.
Yeah. Just pick one, 'cause there's always one that people are after, and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, if I had a nickel for every time." And again, like, you can't if no one's ever heard of you, you're not I think your example is Apple. If you're not Apple, you're not gonna be able to start out in the Wall Street Journal. I'm sorry, it's probably not gonna happen. I'm not saying you can't pitch them stories, but you don't wanna put all your eggs in that basket and be only focused on top tier media.
Of course, because everybody wants to be in that tier A publication.
Right.
Just because you hired a PR firm doesn't guarantee that. It takes momentum. You can't just show up at the bar and expect every single person there to want to give you their number. It takes a little bit of
Yeah.
work.
Yeah, I had somebody send me a note the other day, got in touch about potentially working together, and they started out with, "I'd like to be in, publications like Forbes and, Fast Company," and I'm like, "Oh, well, okay. Well, who are you?" Like, has anyone ever heard like, I mean, not to be,
No,
I don't wanna be rude, but, like and I didn't say that to the person, but I'm
you could
thinking to
say it.
myself, like, "What do you" like, what do you like, what do you are you like, I don't know. Everybody wants to be there. So it's gonna be hard to get there, like, it's not gonna just be, in fact, with Forbes, you could just pay and buy your way in, but we won't get off on that tangent today.
That was the last podcast. And unfortunately, for whatever reason, my chat, so people know, I can't leave comments. It's not syncing with my YouTube. So apologies,
Oh,
guys. I see you, but I can't respond, and
no.
that's
Oh,
fine.
dear.
It's okay.
Well,
Technology.
sorry.
Hey, no big deal.
So, let's kinda go on to the second trend, which is kind of I mean, I think it dovetails into this one because in my view, the trust in journalists and media outlets is shrinking in some sectors, right? We saw a lot of this year, publications kind of, yeah, being influenced too much maybe by the, owners or just, I don't know. They just didn't seem to really grasp the story, and I think they lost a lot of people, and I think that's a trend that's been again, it's not new, but it's gonna continue to impact what we do, working with our clients.
Oh, completely. And unfortunately, we've seen this happen before where there's so many times that media in the past, not until recently, a lot of people have forgotten about that, but they've, how do I say this? Not been completely truthful with it. And it is what it is because you want to get the clicks, you want to get the views on TV. Uh, what's hurting the legitimate media is truly what I would call like the veiled advertorial, where, hey, advertorials are great. You can control the message, you can guarantee it's going to be in there. But there's that fine print that tells the reader it's advertorial.
Mhm,
Often it's easy to miss. And
mhm,
that's where some of the smarter consumers will get upset to the point where when they believe legitimate editorial is advertorial, and that hurts the publication,
Mhm.
and that hurts the industry. So
Yeah.
being upfront about what it is fine. Like if it's an ad, it's cool. Disclose that it's an ad, because an advertorial can provide value.
Yeah.
But when you hide it, it's bad. And often advertorials, I was shown one the other day from a partner. It was written like a fourth grade book report. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is not anything anybody wants to read, and they're going to see right through it. It was not compelling. So I think that's a big part too of it.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, I mean, they've it's been happening, and I think in some ways they've, it's the publications have hurt themselves with some of their policies, and but I think what clients can do, and what I'm hoping to kind of coach them into leaning into, is publishing their own content. So that means on their site, it means on LinkedIn, it maybe means leaning into the trade pubs. I know I talk a lot about that, but they are more trusted than a lot of more mainstream publications by their audience, which is usually who the client is after as far as reaching customers and being in front of potential customers.
you just hit on something really compelling right there. So we talked. I'm pointing up like I'm pointing at the last question. That everyone wants to be in the Wall Street Journal, and we get those calls as often as you do. Great. You have nothing on your website, nothing on your LinkedIn that makes you at all appealing. You make a knife. And what makes you different than all the other knives out there? Okay, you've got this different kind of blade. Cool. What else? Do you have any sort of thought leadership? Do you have any sort of digital paper trail beyond ads? Do you have something compelling that you've written that's not just a fluff piece, but an opinion, especially in your world? Like, take a stance on something, publish it, and have it there so that if I'm a journalist and I want to Google you later, or whatever your favorite search engine is, I can find it, because that matters. It really does. You can't just come out of left field, and that's where you take the owned media and leverage it. You've got a website, you've got LinkedIn, you've got Instagram. Use them.
Yeah. I mean, I that's when I talked to a guy who had started a company, and he wanted to do PR, but I had to be honest and said, I don't know if you're ready. But one of the things that you could do to get ready is make sure that you have some content on your site. Publish 10 blog posts, or publish, I don't know, you don't have a customer story probably to publish yet if you're just starting out, but just put some content up there so that when a journalist does go and look at your social media, or does go and look at your website, which is the first thing they're probably going to do if you get their attention, right? So you want to have something compelling up there, that makes you look like you have momentum, that you're doing stuff, that something is happening, to make it, appear, and probably, hopefully, actually be something that, there's stuff happening, there's momentum there.
You just hit on one of the biggest issues I'm seeing with brands, is that I'll get a call, they're looking for a team, and then they say, hey, we had this PR firm and they did nothing for us. I'm like, okay, let me kick the tires and look at you. And you've said to people in the past, I don't know if you're ready for PR yet. And the challenge that all of us face, whether it's an 11-person agency or a solo practitioner, is so many will not say that. They'll take the money, they'll write a few press releases and show a case study, be like, look, we got these guys on X, Y, and Z trade pub and a billion
Mhm.
impressions on Good Morning America. But certain brands are not ready for PR. You can't just show up at a marathon and hope to wing it. And it takes putting on shoes, tying the shoes, probably training a little bit for it, right?
Right.
Like, can you run a mile? You know,
Yeah.
all of this matters. So a huge thing that we didn't add to the agenda, but brands need to know sometimes they're not ready for PR, and it takes time to
Mhm.
get ready.
Mhm. Yeah. Yep. And I think it's good to have those conversations, and push back a little bit, or at least have a back and forth about, what expectations are realistic if you've never done any PR. And, maybe they have had a bad experience with an agency or a consultant that promised them the moon and didn't deliver. And like, of course that happens. I think, for them, they need to be ask more questions of who they're working with. And then on the other side, we need to be asking more questions of them. What are you bringing to the table? So I think that is a big point. And it's not really necessarily a trend, but I wish it would be a trend that we would have more transparency, more open conversations, and not just take the money and run.
Like you said, transparency, a huge part of it. For anyone listening that's considering hiring a PR firm, if they make you promises on delivering editorial, run. No legitimate PR firm can do that. We can buy advertorial and we can target people, but there's no guarantees with what we do in terms of how quickly coverage can come around.
Right. Right. You have to hang in there a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about our next trend, which we can talk about AI all day because I know that's what everybody wants to talk about. Or maybe people are sick of hearing about it. I don't know.
AI might have a PR problem.
But the point that I'm honing in on, and you may have additional thoughts about AI and PR, but the one that I'm grabbing onto is AI-based search. And I've had a couple of people that I respect in the industry kind of convince me that if companies are serious about showing up in AI-based search, and we're talking about like Perplexity and other similar platforms, they need to be investing in PR so that they show up online in earned media, in content, that whenever you have an opportunity to be on a podcast or contribute to an article or whatever it might be, you take that opportunity and you know that it could impact AI-based search. So when people are searching, and it also impacts Google search. I mean, honestly, it works on both fronts. But I think that we need to make sure that companies understand that they need to be paying attention, investing in earned media, in PR, positioning themselves for this whole, era to come of AI-based search.
This is such a loaded topic, AI, and you hit on so much of it right now. AI is at its worst garbage in, garbage out. It's only as smart as what it's being fed. And that's why you can search the stories all you want for everyone watching. That's why AI hallucinates and sometimes makes up fake sources and comes up with content that is not at all factual. But there's all these deals being strucken. Let me dial it back. Dial that back. The major players in AI are striking deals with publishing companies so that AI can pull information from Condé Nast, from Dotdash
Mhm,
Meredith, from
mhm,
places like the New York Times. And why does that matter? It adds value to AI. It gives AI a resource
mhm,
to learn from, to pull data and facts from. And for those in marketing, who deals with the journalist that's writing those contents? The PR people. It's
mhm,
us. So
mhm.
and this always sounds a little off when I say it, but I'll say it anyway. PR people influence the journalists, and the journalists are going to influence AI. So if you want to be featured when someone is searching for you using AI, you start with the PR people.
And to your point, journalists are influential also with their audiences. And to me, when influencer marketing became a thing, I was like, when I worked in an agency way back before I went out on my own, we had what we called an influencer like top 20, and it was journalists, industry analysts, other people in the industry. So influencer marketing is not new. Journalists are very influential, industry analysts very influential. Of course, that's another thing that PR pros really understand. And, I feel like that's another area that we can really help clients get their arms around.
Completely. Journalists are the original content creators. And one of the biggest misses in the PR space is we didn't own that earlier, and we let
Mhm.
ad and marketing agencies come out with specialties in that zone.
Right.
Whereas, no, we should own the content creators, whether they're on the local news, at a top tier newspaper, or on Instagram. That should be us. And if it comes into, hey, there's advertorial involved,
Mhm.
that should also be us. Because when advertorial is written by someone who doesn't have a background in compelling content, it becomes this, no one wants to read it. I'll just say that.
Yeah. No, well, I've seen a lot of back and forth about, influencers and influencer marketing, and I've never understood how paying someone to say nice things about your product or solution is really, uh, how that is convincing anyone to buy what you are selling. Because to me, you would look for people that were already raving about it and then bring them on. Maybe you do end up paying them or giving them some product or something, but to me, that's a much more, like, authentic way to go about influencer marketing, and again, that wasn't something we were necessarily gonna talk about, but it just
No,
popped in my head.
no, for sure.
And back to the AI-based search. So I talked to Andy Crestodina a couple of weeks ago on PR Explored, and we were talking about LinkedIn, because LinkedIn has an option where you can turn off, you can choose to opt out of allowing it to use what you post to train its AI engine, basically. And I may not be saying that exactly right, but I think that makes sense. So, and there was a whole bunch of, a bunch of stories about it in the news. People were turning off the option. And he said that is like the last thing that you really want to do, because if you want to show up and search, if you want your company, your business, your brand, whether it's a personal brand or you are HP or Apple or Adobe or whoever, you want to be showing up in search. So you need to turn that setting back on if you care about that. Now, I know some people are going to be completely purists about it and not I'll want AI to look at anything they're posting, but it's similar to Google. Like, if you turned off, there are settings you can set on your website so it won't crawl your site, but why would you do that? Like, I don't know. So I thought that was a really good point.
It's a super smart point, and I understand why people wouldn't want it. But if if you want to be in the game, you've got to play the game, and that's where we're at now with AI and social media.
Yeah, it's not going away, and you kind of have to make a decision, if you're gonna participate or not. I don't think that people saying, "Well, I don't want AI to use my stuff," is gonna keep it from happening, and it's not gonna change the fact that many other people are going to opt into that. So, unfortunately, if you're not, on board with that, it can probably impact you in a negative way. So,
Hmm.
just saying.
Super smart point. Let's talk about silos with
All
content and
right.
PR.
Yes, that's always, again, it is a trend, and I wish it would go away. I wish it would be done, but I don't see it going away.
No. But we need, for lack of a better word, we need a holistic approach to it, I think. And that requires communication, like literally between all the gatekeepers. I don't know about you, but I have found sometimes on the client side, we're missing out on certain conversations because we're talking to one person and not someone else that really could add value or spark an idea on our end. And
Mhm.
similarly, and this is one of the reasons why with consumer PR, why we love to have a handle or a hand in the affiliate space, because sometimes what an ecom person wants to have happen isn't what the PR team wants to have happen. And they don't always, even though their desks are, 50 feet away from each other, they're not always talking as much as we'd like. So it's great if we can be in that
Mhm.
conversation.
Right, and there's no cohesion to your message. If you're all I don't wanna just use, cliches, but if you're singing from different songbooks, I mean, you're gonna be delivering mixed messages, and I think the last thing anybody needs, everybody is short on time, their attention span is short. We need to be delivering a cohesive message across every department of the company that communicates with the public, with any of your audiences internally. Also, sometimes your internal audience is also something to consider. So I just feel like, I don't know, I know sometimes it can be territorial, or it's just not part of their process. But it's not that hard to add in a meeting where you sit down with the other departments that you need to be collaborating with and kind of get on the same page about what's coming up. Keep a spreadsheet or use a tool or whatever it takes. But there are ways to leverage, and I get really frustrated when a client brings me in to do PR and I'm, working with them. And usually it's smaller companies, 500 employees or less. So they're not huge, giant enterprise size companies most of the time. But sometimes they'll have a team doing their social or a person doing their content and they are not even thinking that we ought to be talking to each other. And I just feel like when you get an earned media hit, if you're not in sync with social, they need to be sharing that. And if you don't have control over that for the client, it's not, what are you going to do? Like, how do you get it in the pipeline and make sure that it's shared and you tag the journalist, you tag the publication, just kind of PR 101 for us, but for social media, they may not think of it. It may just not come up in their planning process.
I don't want to diverge too much because we've done that already, but you just nailed something that so many brands don't do across the board is share their earned media hits on social media, in newsletters, wherever. A lot of the D2C brands, when they got big, they would always post right on their homepage. We were featured in Esquire or Elle or Good Morning America or, whatever trade publication. So many brands we've worked with, so many brands that I know have other PR teams don't share that. Maybe it doesn't fit their personal brand of social media, but it adds so much value because that's what PR is. When someone's looking for advice, they don't look to an ad. They look
Mhm.
to friends and family.
Mhm.
They look to trusted experts.
Mhm.
And after that, they start searching. So, okay, you ask your parents about something, or you're a good friend of yours, they don't have an opinion, or you ask your doctor, okay, and then you start searching, but you don't search for ads. You
Mhm.
search for a news source that you believe in that's going to recommend to you the best three, whatever. And brands that don't share miss out on amplifying their content.
Yeah. I mean, I know a lot of times, in PR, we work so hard to get the story out there, get it published, get it across the finish line. And then it's like, oh, yay, the story's out. And then, like, just nothing happens, and it's like, well, you could, first of all, put it on your website, put it in your newsletter, share it on social. There's so many other things you can do with it. You could pull quotes and use those in your marketing and another thing that I know that you mentioned was sales, how we bring in sales to what we do in PR. Because I know from my perspective, having a strong connection with the sales team helps me uh, maybe find a customer that we can feature in some of our PR, or we can know like which customers maybe not so happy right now, or maybe they were happy, maybe they're not right now, that kind of thing. So having that close relationship there is another way that we need to be collaborating.
Sales teams have so much insight, and I understand that there might not always be alignment, but at the least hearing what they say to their customers helps, and hearing about the challenges they see there, because then we can borrow from that. We've gotten so many good ideas from just watching sales teams in
Mhm,
action at trade shows and be like,
mhm.
oh, I wouldn't have thought to mention that. That wasn't in any of the marketing materials we were given. That was not in any of the briefs. But that is an amazing point that we're now going to leverage with journalists.
Yeah. Yep. That is another thing to remember, and I'm typing it in the chat so that people will
No
not
problem. So this
forget.
lives in your world a little bit more than mine, but I think visuals are a trend that, especially with shrinking newsrooms and shrinking budgets,
Mhm,
that brands are going to need to really invest in, whether for editorial to be repurposed or
mhm.
just tell the story through PR.
Yeah, I mean, media outlets need visuals, and if you can supply high resolution, high quality visuals, not stock images. We're not talking about just pulling an image down from Unsplash or something. We're talking about actually having a photographer videographer, if you can. I know not everyone has it in their budget, but if you can, have them come in, and you can even have them maybe visit a customer with you. One of my most successful efforts on this front was when a client had a videographer go to the customer, and they did a whole like day, a shoot in there, and then they came out with a great video that we were able to repurpose as earned media. We pulled the transcript and turned it into, I wrote a customer story, and then we pitched that with images and the video, and publications just immediately were like, yes, and publish it. It wasn't even packaging it all up and sending it over. That was, I mean, it wasn't, I'm not going to say it was easy, but like, it was a great win. And it seemed like kind of common sense to me in a way.
Oh, completely. Remember the days, like in your consumer tech days, you probably did a lot of B-roll shoots too to
Mhm,
give to media because they often couldn't come out. Brands that are going to invest in visuals, and this is what kills me often with content where we're not talking to everybody inside. Oh, you're doing a photo shoot, cool. These are the things we want. They're like, no, we know better. No, we need it shot for editorial. And the same thing
mhm,
happens with your visuals. It can't
mhm.
be completely logo driven. It's got to look
Oh,
close enough that the media are publishing it and it doesn't look like an ad. So not everything can have a logo on it. Not
yeah,
everything can have a name drop. Provide the journalists with the tools they can use to tell you a story. Like getting back to, we're working on the Coral Reef project. Great. Let's just assume most media outlets don't have the budget to fly out and do underwater shoots of these
mm,
reefs.
yeah,
So we need to give them schematics, we need to give them video, we need to give them images, compelling images, like you said,
mhm.
not just from Unsplash. We're like, hey, here's some fish and coral. Looks great. No, we need to do better. And that was one of the first questions we asked when we were talking to them, like, do we have things to show? Because otherwise, we've just got a lot of great data and research that
Mhm.
is not going to make for very strong mainstream appeal.
And it's so important. And I had journalists even tell me that, out of all the pitches that are in their inbox, if you're sharing high quality, high resolution visuals with your pitches, that can help you stand out above all of the other, folks competing for their time and attention and space in their publication. So I think it's really important. And I'm going to continue to talk about this. And we're also seeing there's also going to be searching based on visuals, as in I think there's already something out there that's doing this. So we're going to see that growing too. Like you circle something in an image and it will search based on that. So you really want to be showing up. And if you don't have any visuals to send, how are you going to do that? The other thing I
Completely.
was gonna say is to make sure when you are asked to, like, say an editor contacts you about a client contributing to a story, always send over visuals, even if they didn't ask, and then send a caption so that the branding is in the caption. So at least it's gonna say courtesy of ABC company, but you can even write in the caption, this is ABC's company, blah, blah, blah machine. I do a lot of manufacturing PR. So I would write it something like that. And so then there's, even if they edit it out of the actual caption, it's still, the name is still in the
Yes. And
of.
like you said, all at once. You don't show up for the race and then put your shoes on, right? You don't
Yeah.
wait for the journalist to ask. You say, hey, here's all the assets we have. Here's the background info. And also, leading us to our next topic, do you need to speak with X, Y, and Z versus
Mhm.
just pull a generic quote? So let's talk about maybe leveraging the C-suite and the VP level people or at the brand to make that story more colorful.
Yeah, I mean, I think that people want to hear from your C-suite, and of course, we see examples all the time of CEOs and thought leaders putting their foot in their mouth. Okay, so we're not talking about going out there unprepared or posting on LinkedIn without your comms folks, your PR team kind of weighing in on it, maybe ghostwriting for them, which, I often do for my clients.
Of course.
Um, it kind of flows out of other things that we're doing, so it makes sense. I saw some firm was charging $1,000 or something to write a LinkedIn post for a client, and I'm like, "Oh, wow, okay, maybe I need to reconsider my rates." But anyway, to me, it's a natural fit for what we're doing because hopefully we're in touch with those folks anyway, and I think people wanna hear from them. It increases trust and adds credibility, And I think that we don't want to hide them. We want to put them out in the spotlight. And even if they're reluctant, we can do media training and things to kind of prepare them to get them ready to go.
Completely. If you look at sports teams, it's a reason why, and sports teams are brands. And it's the reason why there's certain people that are out there speaking, and the ones that tend to do the most of it, besides being the best players, they've got personality. If you look at one of the biggest brands in the world right now, and he's a very polarizing guy, Elon Musk. And I know people that will not buy a Tesla because they don't love him. And there's a lot of people out there that left Twitter, or it's called X now, for the same reason. And that's fine. But people love having a connection to a brand, and the brands that can build that, whether it's a B2B brand or a consumer brand, and have some sort of face to it,
Mm-hmm.
it's massive. And for journalists too, we've got to make the C-suite available to them, and that's a pain in the butt. I understand no one has the time, but it builds such an affinity for your brand. Yeah, you're paying us, the PR people, to talk to the journalists, and that's great, but they want to hear it from the inside. So once we make that connection,
Yeah.
they've got to do it. And like you said before, you can't wing it. There have been so many times we've offered media training to a client, and they don't want to do it because they know exactly what they're going to say. They've done this before. It's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And then a curveball comes up, or not even a curveball, just a question that's asked in a different way. And
Mm-hmm.
you see silence. They didn't see that coming. And as a
Mm-hmm.
PR person, there's nothing we can do. That's one of the worst feelings ever.
I mean, for me, when I have access to the C-suite, it makes a huge difference in our success in the PR efforts. And I really like to spend a little bit of time, at least every quarter, with my CEO of my client. And if they're willing to do that, that they're invested in what you're doing. They're going to support what you're doing. They see the value in what you're doing. It just helps overall. It helps you be successful. The client is successful. The audience responds well. It's a win across the board. So to me, that is it should be a trend. Again, some of these things, I don't know if they're trends, but I'm hoping, like fingers crossed, that they're going to be trends.
Yeah. Oh, I see a comment from Beth Watkins about
Mm-hmm.
search and AI. So Google
Yeah.
search is pulling from brand pages, but a lot of these now are pulling from publishers.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that's where PR is incredibly important, because if you ask ChatGPT
Mm-hmm.
for, let's say, the top 5 pocket knives, right? It's pulling some of that information now from true articles on the best pocket knives out there for this year.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the PR people that influence that. And so you've got to look at the sources too. That's one of the things I think
Mm-hmm.
not everyone realizes on the consumer side. And I mean consumer side meaning just general population,
Mm-hmm.
that not everything AI spits out at you is going to be correct. Similar to that, not everything on the internet is correct. And you've got to check the sources. So we need
Yes.
to have, if we're going to live, a more educated, more media literate population that can understand the difference between editorial, advertorial, and just looks around. Just because someone on the street hands you a pamphlet that says X, Y, and Z doesn't mean it's true. And just because you start a blog post that says the same thing also doesn't mean it's true. So media literacy is something we need to work on in the States.
Well, I agree with you. Unfortunately, I feel like I don't know if that's going to happen because people want it fast. They want it now. They no critical thinking, no thinking through. We're just going to pull it up and we're going to go and run with whatever it spits out at us. That's a huge problem. I don't know what to say about it. My
No.
answer, which you kind of stole to Beth's question, is that it does show you sources. The search, the result, whether you're using Google or Perplexity or
Mhm.
whatever it it shows the sources. And so you want your company, your client showing up in those sources. That's what I would say,
Yeah.
how that should be addressed. And that means we need more. We need, more content, more contributions, more, we need the clients to have more opportunities to get their name out there and get their content out there.
Yeah. And you can look at it like this with advertising, right? You can have the best ad in the world,
Mhm.
but you don't just put it in one place. Unless, it's a billboard above your bagel shop, then yeah, we're going to put the billboard right here. Bagels
Mhm.
are sold below. Great. But when brands do an ad buy, they're buying in multiple places because it takes multiple impressions to convince the customer to, move on it, to even remember it, right? So with
Mhm.
PR, it's the same thing. You've got to be in more than one place usually to move the needle. If you're not, you're hoping that one media placement on that top trade publication or in the New York Times will do it. And again, that gets to your point, Michelle, of the social media teams need to share the big PR hits. Okay, we're in the New York Times tomorrow. Awesome. Not everyone's going to read it. Not everyone's going to remember it. So social needs to share that a day later or 3 days later
Mhm.
or share it 3 times.
Mhm.
Because as much time as I unfortunately spend on Instagram, I miss a lot of content. So you've got to remind me.
Yep. Is there anything else as we kind of wrap up here,
Ooh,
that you wanna touch on?
you know, I think with PR, one of the trends that's been happening for years now is it's just going to take more to do more. And that's standard for any marketing. There was a short time where those that were very savvy on the ad space with performance-based ads could spend $1 and get X amount of impressions, but it was an area where a lot of brands weren't playing now. So that's since changed. And if you want to be in front of your customer, whether it's B2B or consumer, it's just going to take more effort, and more effort comes with a higher dollar cost investing in your PR program. If you're spending the same on your ad campaign now as you were 5 years ago, it's not working. If you're expecting to spend on a PR campaign next year that's the
Mhm.
same as you had 3 years ago,
Mhm.
you're gonna get you're not gonna get the same results.
I think PR is an afterthought for a lot of companies. I still see that, and I think that, again, with the AI-based search, that we see happening, that trend, I think that is something to rethink if you're not considering factoring PR into your marketing efforts. I think you really need to be, coming back, around on that and thinking about it again and kinda not waiting to let everyone else, jump on the train before you get on board, you know?
Yeah. Michelle, to build on what you just said, PR is an afterthought until somebody in the C-suite sees a feature on their competitors, and then they care about it. So when it comes to
Yeah,
PR, you've got to constantly be out there. Otherwise, someone else is going to take your slot.
it's true. Bill knows.
Stop.
Well,
Stop. Stop.
well,
Oh
I do wanna thank Bill Byrne, co-founder of Remedy PR, and do you use any other titles, or are there any other links that we should share for you?
gosh, co-founder's fine. It's managing director, but I do everything. I'm active in media outreach. I'm active in business development. Like yourself, it's important that we should say when you're interviewing a PR team, whether it's someone who's on
Mhm,
their own or a small
mhm.
team like us, are the people that you're meeting with, are they in touch with what's happening in the media? Are they showing you case studies from 5 years ago? So anyway,
Yeah,
I do
yeah,
a lot here.
you do, and I really value, your opinions and your input, and thank you so much for taking time to be with me
Please.
today, and I am wishing everybody, the happiest of holidays. I hope people have a chance to relax a little bit and maybe get away from social media and, everything online and kind of, enjoy, whatever they might enjoy over the holidays. And I'm Michelle Garrett. I'll be back with more episodes of PR Explored, the video PR podcast in 2025. And I hope you'll tune in and join me then. Thanks so much.
Take care, everybody.